The film opens with old drawings and paintings that reflect ancient folklore tales, setting the tone for what's to come. We're taken to a quiet, rural English village called Burrow, where life seems calm and simple. The story begins with a chapter titled The Gift of Hair. Here we meet Rebecca Holland, the village vicar who runs the parish church. She lives with her husband Henry and their 10-year-old daughter, Grace. The family hasn't been in Burrow for long, but everyone treats them kindly. Still, something about Grace feels unusual. Early on, we notice her pulling strands of her own hair and placing them in a small box. Outside, she also spots 3 masked figures. Instead of being scared, she calmly picks up a pair of scissors and even tries to harm her pet rabbit, Bun Bun. In the process, she ends up injuring her own hand. Why Grace is behaving this way and what it means will only be revealed later. In this village, a harvest festival is celebrated every year, a tradition that has been followed for centuries, long before Christianity arrived. This year, young Grace is chosen to play the role of the harvest angel, since the festival includes small performances. But her mother, Rebecca, feels uneasy. As a Christian, she doesn't like the idea of thanking some ancient spirit for the harvest. Still, she can't go against village rules, so she reluctantly agrees to attend with her family. The villagers are warm and welcoming. We're also introduced to Jocelyn Abney, a man with no interest in Christianity, but deeply loyal to the old ways. On the day of the festival, the entire village gathers. Many wear masks and costumes, filling the air with joy and celebration. Jocelyn takes the stage, playing the role of the Lord of Misrule. He asks the crowd to call upon a spirit named Gallogog, an ancient pagan figure tied to fertility and harvest. The villagers believe they must honor Gallogog to keep their land prosperous. For outsiders, it looks like nothing more than folklore brought to life. A performer, dressed as the spirit, entertains the crowd, and Rebecca realizes for the first time that this festival involves more than just fun. It carries traces of old demon-like legends. Still, the night is full of excitement, and the villagers continue their celebrations near the forest. The villagers dance and celebrate, but the story suddenly takes a darker turn. Rebecca can't find Grace. She asks another child, Bryony, if she has seen her. The girl is crying and keeps repeating strange words. Hair, blood, fire, sun. These will later become the titles of the story's 4 chapters. When Rebecca presses her for answers, Bryony finally says that Grace is gone. Terrified, Rebecca searches the forest and spots her daughter with someone. She runs after her, calling out for Grace to stop, but instead, Rebecca stumbles into a hollow path and is left shaken and confused. By the next morning, Grace has vanished. Police arrive to file a report, and the second chapter begins. The Gift of Blood. They ask Rebecca questions, but she feels no one is taking the disappearance seriously. When officers try to take some of Grace's belongings, Rebecca refuses to let them. Henry believes the police will find their daughter, but Rebecca senses something far worse, like Grace is in real danger. In her desperation, she prays to God. Later, lying on Grace's bed, she even sees a brief vision of her daughter. A search party heads into the woods and only finds a torn piece of Grace's dress. The discovery pushes Rebecca deeper into fear. Refusing to give up, she continues searching the surrounding areas on her own. Not long after, Henry calls Rebecca home, saying the police have found something. It turns out to be festival footage, clearly showing Grace speaking with a boy named Derry Nash before she disappeared. Suspicion quickly falls on him. To distract Rebecca from her fears, Henry takes her to the village pub. The place is full of people who seem genuinely upset about Grace's disappearance. From their conversations, Rebecca learns that the Nash family isn't well liked. Derry lives with his grandfather, far from the rest of the village. Worried, Rebecca convinces Henry to go there immediately, but at the house, they only meet the grandfather, who says Derry isn't home. While searching the property, Rebecca discovers something disturbing. Animal remains hanging with a doll placed among them, and beneath it, chilling words. He stands in the fields and waits. The story then moves into the next chapter, The Gift of Fire. We see Jocelyn Abney at home, drawing strange symbols with his hands. As he leaves the room, we glimpse a boy named Thomas, though it's unclear whether Thomas is really there or just an illusion. We'll learn more about him later. The next day, Rebecca gathers the villagers at the church. She asks them to hold a vigil, a night of prayer, for Grace. This gives her hope, as she believes a dream she had was a sign from God that Grace is still safe. But Jocelyn interrupts. He declares he doesn't believe in her God or her vision. Instead, he warns that these dreams are not divine at all. They're the work of Gallogog, the dark figure said to stand in the fields, watching. 2 days have already passed, and he insists everything is happening exactly as it always has. With that, he walks away, leaving an unsettling thought behind. Grace may already be in the hands of this dark force. Rebecca ignores his warnings and urges everyone to continue focusing on their prayers. Rebecca's neighbors tried to help, but she refused to rest until Grace was found. Meanwhile, Jocelyn was performing a strange ritual. He cracked open eggs. One of them even contained a lifeless chick. Afterward, he traced eerie symbols with his hands. Other villagers were also behaving oddly, placing hair into jars of blood, as if preparing for something terrible to come. At the same time, Ida, an elderly woman, went to collect eggs from her backyard, but inside the coop, she saw something horrifying, a fleeting glimpse of Gallogog, the dark figure said to haunt the fields. Shaken, Ida wandered the streets in a daze until Rebecca found her and brought her home. Ida, still in shock, whispered that she had seen the evil one himself. Rebecca urged her to pray, but Ida only laughed bitterly, warning that he wouldn't like it. Then she suddenly pointed to the door, insisting he was there. In that moment, the doors slammed shut on their own. Ida ripped out some of her hair and burst into wild laughter, leaving Rebecca disturbed and frightened. Later, while sitting with Miri, Rebecca learns more about Gallogog and the folklore of the region. Miri gives her a book describing how, in 1621, a man named Tobias Braun claimed he had made contact with Gallogog. People called him the Lord of Misrule and believed he was the spirit of the land, a figure with godlike powers who blessed the town with miracles. According to legend, Tobias built a black barn where offerings were placed for Gallogog. In return, the spirit promised fertility and prosperity. But these were no ordinary offerings. The villagers were expected to give up their children. Each year, one family was chosen, and they left their child inside the barn as a gift. When Christianity eventually spread to the area, the church discovered this practice. Tobias and his followers were burned, and the ritual was ended. Centuries later, the tradition was revived, though now disguised as a festival where Gallogog was portrayed only as a monster of folklore. To Rebecca, it all seemed like empty superstition, but she also learned a darker truth. 12 years earlier, Jocelyn's son Thomas had vanished in the same way. No one ever found him. At that moment, Ida appeared and declared that both Thomas and Grace had been taken so they could know him. She urged Rebecca to go to the Black Barn herself and meet Gallogog. In a disturbing scene, Ida suddenly lost control, shouting the same words over and over, while Rebecca looked on in shock. Rebecca was terrified, but she refused to give up. She went to Jocelyn, hoping he would share something about Thomas. But Jocelyn didn't care. He believed Gallogog had chosen his son years ago, and now Grace had been chosen as well. In his mind, these offerings were necessary to bring prosperity to the village. The truth was, Jocelyn despised the church. To him, their faith meant nothing compared to the spirit he worshipped. He explained 4 signs that would appear over 4 days. First, the gift of blood. Second, the gift of hair. Third, a great fire lit in the fields. And finally, a lunar eclipse. Rebecca dismissed this as nothing more than an old legend. She insisted Grace had been taken away by Nash or his family, not by some spirit. Jocelyn only laughed, telling her she still didn't understand, that soon she would meet Gallogog herself. His lack of grief over Thomas unsettled Rebecca even more. To him, it was almost a blessing that the spirit had taken his son. With no help from Jocelyn, Rebecca left. As she made her way through the woods, she suddenly heard Nash's voice. He begged her to stop chasing him, swearing he hadn't taken her daughter. Before Rebecca could catch him, Nash ran off into the night. In that same moment, she caught a brief glimpse of the ominous black barn. The story then enters its 4th chapter, All is as was. The next day, Rebecca visits Bryony at her school, hoping she might know something about Grace. Bryony mocks her, and Rebecca, losing patience, strikes her. Later, when Rebecca shows her the bundle of hair, Bryony explains that it was made for their nature club, which meets in a secret room. She takes Rebecca there and reveals what they've been taught, that Gallogog demands offerings. Bryony insists Grace is lucky, chosen among them all, because this way Gallogog can draw Rebecca closer. Rebecca then learns that Jocelyn is the one teaching these children, filling their heads with folklore and strange songs. That's why, in the film's opening, Grace was already behaving so strangely. She was being influenced and brainwashed. When Rebecca asks if Grace is really with Gallogog, Bryony confirms she is, hidden in the black barn. Tonight is the final night of the ceremony. After this, the barn will vanish, and Gallogog will take Grace forever. The revelation terrifies Rebecca. Bryony explains that Jocelyn himself told them these stories and taught them the chants. Just then, Bryony's father arrives, furious at Rebecca for hitting his daughter. Rebecca tries to reason with him, warning that the children are being manipulated and that they must go to the police. But Bryony's father refuses. He insists these are his people. He knows them well, and Rebecca is simply misunderstanding everything. Rebecca finally realized the villagers were all working together. If she wanted to save her daughter, she would have to fight alone. She told Henry that the villagers knew exactly where Grace was and that even the police were covering for them. After all, the officers had taken away Grace's belongings to erase evidence of the ritual. But Henry didn't believe her, and Rebecca stormed off in anger. Later, when Henry called the police himself, he discovered something shocking. The case on Grace had been officially closed. That's when he began to understand Rebecca was right. Something was very wrong. Meanwhile, Jocelyn wandered into the forest, stripped of his clothes, toward a massive fire where the villagers waited for nightfall. At the same time, Rebecca prayed in the church, begging for guidance. In a vision, Grace appeared to her, urging her to follow the 3rd sign. That night, Rebecca went to the vigil the villagers had organized for Grace. Chaos erupted there, but Rebecca finally saw the truth. The villagers were never truly Christian. They only pretended. Their real faith was in Gallogog, and they had known all along where Grace was. At that moment, Henry arrived, struck Jocelyn across the face, and pulled Rebecca away. Though neither of them could understand why the villagers clung to such dark beliefs, Henry apologized to Rebecca for doubting her. When Rebecca and Henry returned home, they found their car set on fire. As they rushed outside, masked villagers grabbed Henry. In the chaos, Nash appeared and insisted once more that he hadn't taken Grace. She was with Gallogog. He told Rebecca that Grace was inside the Black Barn and that only she could enter, because Gallogog had chosen her. But before they could act, masked villagers captured them both. Nash was taken down on the spot, and Rebecca was dragged before the townspeople. All of them, wearing masks, were ready for the ritual, following Jocelyn's every word. To them, Jocelyn was the new Lord of Misrule. They trusted him because Gallogog had once taken his son, Thomas. Jocelyn's hatred for the church ran deep. He remembered how long ago the church burned Tobias, their first leader. Now, with Rebecca as the village reverend, he wanted revenge. To prove his loyalty to Gallogog, Jocelyn brought Henry forward. In front of everyone, he set Henry on fire. Rebecca watched in horror as her husband lost his life in agony, powerless to stop it. At that moment, she realized there was no fighting the villagers. No one would help her. If she wanted to save her daughter, she would have to face Gallogog herself. Jocelyn made sure of it, forcing her toward the destiny he believed was chosen for her. The villagers began their ritual, chanting endlessly. Rebecca joined in, pulling strands of her own hair, which Jocelyn cast into the forest. Suddenly, the Black Barn appeared before her. Inside, she found Grace, blindfolded and trembling. Mother and daughter embraced, but Grace warned her they couldn't leave. He wouldn't allow it. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps. Rebecca turned, and for the first time, Gallogog revealed himself. No longer just a story, but real, a towering figure crowned with horns. Terrified yet defiant, Rebecca stared straight into his eyes, then bowed and offered her hair. With a haunting roar, the scene cut to black. Moments later, Rebecca emerged from the barn holding Grace. The villagers were stunned. Jocelyn cried out in fury, saying she had stolen Gallogog's gift and doomed them all. But Rebecca stood firm. She told Jocelyn that when Gallogog had taken Thomas, it was his chance to face the spirit, yet he had cowered in fear. She, however, had looked Gallogog in the eye and reclaimed her child. Now, she declared, she was the new Misrule, and she would end this madness. The villagers turned on Jocelyn at her command. They attacked and set him on fire, his reign finally over. The film closes with Rebecca and Grace inside the church, surrounded by villagers. Rebecca leads them in prayer, signaling the end of Gallogog's hold and the beginning of a new chapter for the town. This film shows us that old traditions never truly disappear. Instead, they hide beneath new religions, continuing in secret. Societies use these fear-based systems to control people, and for their survival, they always target the weakest: innocents, children, and outsiders, turning them into scapegoats.